There are so many opportunities to help people who have trouble for so many reasons, right? Ingesting the vast amounts of information that so many of us find just so simple to do. So I do think, of course, I think that AI for good is the default state here.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. Thanks again for making this one of the most downloaded podcasts about the future of work. If you enjoy what we do, please like, comment, and share in your favorite podcast app. And we'll keep sharing great conversations like the one we have for today. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. I'm also an investor in and advisor to more than 30 AI-first companies, and as you know, a firm believer in the power of technology to make humans better. If you're passionate about changing the world with AI, or maybe just ready for your next adventure, let's talk. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly on this show, and of course, the added bonus is you get one AI fun fact. Today's fun fact: Ron Ronan from Equally AI writes this week in VentureBeat about how generative AI can make the web more accessible for those with disabilities. He makes several good points that I hadn't considered. Generative AI can generate alt text for images, which can make web content more accessible for people with visual impairments. It can convert written content into audio, which can make web content more accessible for people with hearing impairments. It can rephrase complex or technical content in simpler language, which can make web content more accessible for people with cognitive disabilities. And of course, it can automate the process of identifying and fixing accessibility issues on websites. Concerns about the dangers of AI are very real. We talk about those almost weekly, but it's also important to appreciate how it's making the world safer, easier to navigate, and more accessible for so many. As always, we'll link to the full article in today's show notes. Now, shifting to this week's conversation. In 2020, when today's guest founded her company, the transformer architecture was relatively new, and OpenAI was really a science experiment funded by Elon Musk and others to ensure that AGI benefits all humanity. May and her team commercialized an early version of a copilot for writing content long before we appreciated the value of next word prediction. Since then, May, Habib, and the team have raised $21 million from an exceptional group of investors, including Insight Partners and Gradient Ventures. Today, Writer helps companies author content that complies with style and brand guidelines and also ensures grammatical accuracy. It's used by an amazing list of organizations, including Spotify, Intuit, and Uber. Prior to Writer, May co-founded Qordoba and was a global shaper for the World Economic Forum after graduating from Harvard with a BA in economics. And without further ado, May, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. Let's get started by having you share a bit more about your background and how you became passionate about this space.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you for having me on the show, Dan. Wow, let's see. I started in really NLP more than 10 years ago. And the thing that had really become like inextricably like tied to my soul, I think, was the problem of language and the reality that a lot of inequities were the result of the language you were born speaking or not speaking. And we discovered the transformer in our machine translation journey. We ended up starting, my co-founder and I, a machine translation company, and the things we learned in that first journey, including what we learned about transformers, helped start Writer. Before I was an entrepreneur, I was in banking and private equity. I worked at a sovereign wealth fund. And before that, I was at Lehman Brothers and then Barclays Capital. People ask how, a banker became an entrepreneur, but it was really, that was kind of the sideshow for a little while. I feel like I've always been an entrepreneur. My parents were small business owners, and I grew up in family businesses and had, lots of side hustles as a middle schooler and a high schooler. So that's a bit about me. I'm in San Francisco. I have two kids under 4. I split my time. My husband is British. We split our time between San Francisco and London. But the company's in SF.
Having been in and around the world of generative AI, pre and post ChatGPT, what has surprised you most about just the unbridled euphoria we've seen since the launch of ChatGPT last November?
Oh, it's been absolute madness and so much excitement. I wouldn't take it back for anything. We spent a lot of 2020 and 2021 trying to tell enterprise leaders why they shouldn't be scared of AI. And what has happened post Chat GPT is the risk for being seen to champion these products internally has just gone to zero. Because there is, thanks to the brilliant consumerization of AI via Chat GPT, so much hands-on understanding of the value. And that has just created a sea change in our business from a market perspective. It is no longer, your very early adopters who are your ardent fans. It's much broader than that. And, luckily for us, a lot of those very early believers, folks at Intuit and United Healthcare and Accenture, now are leading the charge. Those exact individuals who came inbound to us a couple of years ago, looking for what we did, mostly because they were sort of dreaming, I wish I could just do this thing automatically. Wouldn't that be great? So it has felt like 2 years have elapsed since January of this year. So many of the executives at our customers, got religion on AI over Christmas, it felt. So it's been amazing.
In both of our day jobs, we interact with a lot of enterprises that are just now starting to ask good questions and formulate their generative AI strategies. What do you think is the number one thing that most enterprises don't appreciate about, let's say, the risks and challenges of building an AI strategy around some public foundation model like a GPT?
I think the thing that is most underappreciated is the demo use case is easy. So, getting something that folks get excited about and the CEO's pounding the table on, and kind of the sexy hackathon result, that is phenomenal as a engine starter. But the productization and putting into production, just the constant reinvention of a bunch of workflows with AI, that's the magic. That is the promised land. And it's a lot more, it's just a lot more work than folks think it might be. Now, I do think the answer isn't rebuild your own LLM from scratch, even as the cost comes down. I think in a few years, it's going to feel like it is as silly as everyone building their own search engine. We wouldn't do that. But I do think that the gulf between where we are and that promised land, we're going to do faster than any other tech cycle ever. I think we'll be on the other side of this in a couple of years, just because folks are moving so quickly, the technology is moving so quickly, and because there's so much value. I mean, we do ROI analyses here now where folks are showing 40 mil plus of savings, and it's very hard to see anything less than that, given what the technology can do. And execs see those numbers, and this is a transformation that is going to come top down. And so we will see a lot of our enterprise customers, I think, learning how to bridge that gap, right? We're helping them, we're helping educate them. But unlike other tech adoption cycles, I think this one's going to be a lot shorter because there's so much pull from the companies themselves.
So foundation large language models know nothing about your company, or certainly not your brand guidelines, your style guidelines, the grammar that you use. And yet a lot of enterprises, I think, are a little bit naive, thinking that because foundation LLMs just hoovered up everything on the web, that they're day one ready for their enterprise. Maybe talk about the work that Writer does to use next word prediction, but in the context of your brand, your style, and how you get from a public version of like a chat GPT to a writer version where it's hyper personalized to your enterprise.
So we, at a high level, put three things together that make this a org-wide, enterprise-ready solution. It's a large language model that's in our family of large language models. We have a family of models called Palmyra X for NLG and NLU use cases and benchmarks, ranks above 3.5 turbo, which powers ChatGPT and other famous and large models. We don't do code or images, so we get to be way more specific about what we do. The model is a 43 bell parameter model, and we have been able to train on the use cases that our customers care most about, really text understanding and generation. We pair that with a set of AI guardrails. Brand can be one of them, but like if you're an R&D and you're using Writer to, query data sheets, you don't really care a lot about brand. So this is, multiple types of use cases that fit on top of this solution. So it's the LLM plus the AI guardrails, which can be brand. They are also accuracy, it's compliance, it's bias, it's a lot of different things that are both LLM based and NLP based, right? A lot of these rules you got to apply after the content comes out of the LLM. And we are just as much an NLP company as we are an LLM company. A lot of ML, obviously, on the NLP side. It's all ML, but it's happening outside of the large language model. The third piece, and this is really critical, is the knowledge graph. And we actually do graph databases of a company's knowledge and not vector databases, because for so many of the use cases that we tackle, people are querying lots of different types of documents, lots of different formats, and they're looking for answers and generative and research use cases that really span across all of those documents. So we put all of that together in a solution that provides really fast time to value for customers, because the UIs are pre-built on top. So whether you are trying to get an RFP answered or you're putting together a quiz, there is a template for that. And it is calling this foundation of, yes, a foundation model, but also your knowledge graph and your AI guardrails. And so what comes out is much more trustworthy, it's much higher quality. It already editorially is correct and matches your voice and isn't biased and meets your compliance requirements, whatever they may be, from grade level. We have a lot of healthcare customers who have to write at a certain grade level because it's regulated by state. To language that our financial services customers can't use because it's not plain language, or it makes something seem too hard, or makes something seem too easy. So these are all problems that people were solving before very manually. And Writer can collapse a bunch of different parts of a workflow down to really one button. But it's not as simple as it seems, right? In terms of some of these demos, and back to what you were asking, Dan, at the beginning, it's really understanding all the components that you need to make the content that comes out when you click generate good and useful.
So you mentioned a 43 billion parameter model, Palmyra, and kind of the approach using a graph database as opposed to a vector database that's more commonly used with an LLM. But there's still inherent, call it, risks of using LLMs to generate content. They often replicate human bias. We obviously all know they are prone to providing misinformation. They can abuse copyrighted or reproduce copyrighted content. We've all learned about that recently from the Sarah Silverman lawsuit. So there's certainly risks, even if you've trained or fine-tuned a model of your own. What's the kind of writer perspective on how to exercise AI responsibly, get the ROI out of it that you described, but also do it in a way that is thoughtful with respect to those risks?
Yeah, it's a great question. The AI guardrails part of our product does a really good job addressing a lot of those one by one. But I would say much more than the technical features and micro features here. It's the approach and methodology. This is a generative AI is best done use case by use case. And right now we're still very early days. Oh, use cases are summarization. Okay, summarization of what, for whom, and when in a workflow. Like, let's get hyper specific here. Because when you can get hyper specific, you can do the prompt engineering and the fine tuning and get the data that you need and the context that you need, super unstructured. Like, this isn't hard. It doesn't take months. It doesn't even take weeks. You can get it in a knowledge graph. But you're going to be so much more confident about what comes out of the model when you are accessing the model through, this kind of like filter of the use case. And so we've gotten comfortable enough with that approach over the last 3 years that we will actually indemnify financial services and healthcare customers now. And we are the first text-based AI company that is doing that. Firefly from Adobe is doing it on images, and I believe Shutterfly or Shutterstock is about to, or was reported that they were thinking about it. So, on the tech side, it is produce a lot of risk for an organization to be accessing, an off-the-shelf model without all of the safeguards. But, in addition to the AI guardrails, I would say the safeguard of use case, and that use case being documented, being hyper-specific, understanding who is responsible for it, who are the experts that are using the use case. All of that matters, I think, a lot more to reducing risk than even AI guardrails, because, the wrong person in the seat misinterpreting something out of the LLM, even with AI guardrails, could still mess up your company and introduce, data or privacy or brand risk.
So let's say you're talking to an audience of marketers or copywriters who understandably might feel threatened by technologies like Writer. What do you say to them about the future of their roles and what role AI and automation might play in automating tasks that they thought were, an innate part of the human experience? And, they went to school for years or have decades of experience, crafting the art of something that Writer can do perhaps better than them, and never takes breaks, gets smarter all the time. Like, talk to us about the human condition and what those copywriters are thinking when they first get introduced to Writer.
It's a good question, and I'm going to answer it the long way, Dan, because this is a podcast. I was an analyst. It was my first job out of school. I was at my desk most days till 11 midnight, including weekends. Most organizations to date are having trouble recruiting people who want to be at their desks at 11 o'clock or midnight. And I don't think AI is going to make as many jobs obsolete as what folks think. I do think the way that we do these jobs will change much more than we think. The functions of a marketing team aren't going to be so different in 2 years and 3 years and 5 years than they are today. Maybe not different at all. But the way we do those jobs will be different. And I think the speed at which we can get some of the work that had been taking up so much of our day, that's going to be an exciting thing. When I think about our customers whose kind of AI enabled employees have been able to take on more creative projects or tackle that big thing that they had wanted to do for a long time, or see new ways of working open up, right? An example is at L'Oreal, we work with social community managers, and them realizing only when, they got a sense of what Writer could do, that, hey, in addition to responding to folks kind of one-on-one here, we can use Writer to actually absorb and ingest literally hundreds of videos that influencers post about our products. And now we get insight on that also. And so many of our roles are transforming, I think, in marketing, but the underlying jobs to be done here don't go away. The way that we do it might.
So you've got young kids, I've got young kids, and let's say we're having a heart-to-heart with them about what kinds of careers to pursue, or even before careers, just what are the skills they should be investing in, even as early as elementary school.
Yeah.
What are the skills that you think are future-proof in an era where it's likely, their collie's going to be a bot, and there's going to be a lot of things that you and I learned in school that our kids probably won't need to.
Mm-hmm. The enthusiasm and curiosity for like the interesting question, and the courage to not feel like any question is inappropriate or stupid. I really think those are going to be the two things that will really help folks adjust to a world where, yeah, AI is going to have more facts and more insight. But if you don't know how to ask for that insight, or you don't have a vision for what that collaboration could look like, it's going to be a lot less successful than, I think, a human AI collaboration where, the human has got a sense of like where and how to direct the conversation, and the insight probe. And so, it's some folks have talked about, like, and even I, maybe a year ago, said things like, AI is like having, a chief of staff and like the best sort of like out of school junior assistant that you could ever have, right? Very soon it's going to be, and thanks to like what we're doing, I mean, Writer, when it's fully implemented, feels like AGI inside of an enterprise. It's going to feel much more than a chief of staff or a junior researcher. It's going to feel like, the smartest person you ever met. But they aren't going to have the same kinds of like human to human insights and breakthroughs, and certainly ability to empathize or connect with people, and the curiosity that gets us to constantly be looking for the new or the novel or the connection. I think is going to be a skill that a skill or an attitude, or however we want to categorize that way of being, that will be a much more distinguishing feature or characteristic, I think, than before. It always has been, but I think, schools that don't adapt are going to produce, outcomes that are less than optimal.
I mentioned in the fun fact article, I really enjoyed thinking about AI from the perspective of people with disabilities and all the ways that it's changing the world for someone who's vision or hearing impaired, or has other kinds of cognitive deficiencies. And I've expressed often on this podcast that the AI doomers miss an opportunity to really celebrate what is transformative about the technology. I'd be curious to know, from your travels, your customers, your perspectives on the world, what's one way that you think AI will change the world for the better, that maybe transcends the bounds of what Writer does today?
Yeah, well, I can start with what Writer does today. We help a lot of marketers with ADHD get over this lump in their throat, when they start their day and start their week. And, for folks with neurodiversity, being able to attack a problem from a lot of different angles helps them get on the dopamine train that keeps us on the work path and gets these deliverables shipped. And when you've got a tool that can help you ideate, that can be a creative sparring partner, that can help you get a first draft out, that can revisit what you've written before. Um, we've heard from dozens of employees of our customers who have neurodiversity, including folks from our own team, that Writer has helped them really love their day and bring joy to work and get joy out of work, in ways that just were not possible before. I've heard from customers whose children use chat GPT and consumer tools and report the same thing, right, in terms of just being so much more excited about school. So I think we are already seeing that. And you opened with an amazing example of how generative AI can help with accessibility. Accessibility is a big part of our platform in terms of just the style guide components and the way that you can manage the writing guidelines, so that you are writing in global English or in ways that people can understand or using plain language. But in just even meeting accessibility requirements, especially as so much of big tech, axes accessibility teams, like it's a beautiful thing that AI is helping people do. We have a customer where, if you want to get dialysis treatment at home, instead of their center, there are binders and binders of content that you have to read and agree to and understand before they'll let you do that. And these are folks, at their end of their life, and they don't want to be going to the center every day. They just want to get this treatment at home. And so many of them give up because they're like, I can't learn all that, right? And so AI can transform that. It can make flashcards. You can Q&A it. We can build a bot on top of it. Like, there are so many opportunities to help people who have trouble for so many reasons, right? Ingesting the vast amounts of information that so many of us find just so simple to do. So I do think, of course, I think that AI for good is the default state here.
I want everyone to play that one back. That last couple minutes is a really good perspective, May. And I share your positive attitude. We're about out of time, but you're not getting off the hot seat without answering one last question for me.
Sure.
I want to know, as one entrepreneur to another, what is your entrepreneurial journey at Writer or even prior to Writer taught you about yourself?
I think a couple of things, Dan. I've been doing this for a long time, and now, yes, we get great press, etc. But we were in obscurity for a long time, and we executed a tough pivot, and it was tough because folks didn't understand transformers and what the opportunity would be, and it felt like we were giving up on something that was making money and had customers, and wait, what? And there were so many reasons why that should have failed, and it didn't, thank God. Um, and the Qordoba journey wasn't an easy one either. We started in Dubai, we moved to San Francisco. There were so many visa issues, and um, there was only one time, literally only one time, that I was about to give up. I was actually sitting in this exact phone booth, and it was around the time of the pivot. And we had a seed term sheet for Writer and starting the new thing. And it just felt like it was just one obstacle too many. Like, this could not be, the universe's plan for me. Just too fucking hard. And I phoned a friend And yeah, I've obviously talked to a lot of friends about the entrepreneurial journey that whole time, but it was a almost like a pre-grieving call. Like, I want you to know I've given up here. I'm like getting emotional thinking about it now. And her name is Sarah, my best friend. And obviously I didn't give up, but I came really, really damn close. And I think the two things I've learned about myself is, one, I actually enjoy the struggle. Like, I actually find joy in the building, in the milestones, in the celebrating the wins when they come, and doing hard shit with smart, good people. I actually love that. And I think it was just the strength of the team that had me not give up. There was just absolutely no way I could say no to working with these incredible people, the early writer team. And so I think the loving the hard I've learned about myself, and the maybe being addicted to the hard also. I don't know. I've just worked every waking minute Monday to Friday since I was 8, and I have like no other default state.
Such a nice way to say it, being addicted to the hard. I think there are those days when you feel like you're 2 inches tall,
Mm-hmm.
and you get so many doors slammed in your face, and then at some point you look back and you realize it's a rite of passage. You have to appreciate what it feels like to really be at the end of your rope and have that call with your friend and feel like you're just there, just on the cusp of giving up. And then all of a sudden something amazing happens. You light a spark for a customer, you create some value, or a team member appreciates the opportunity you gave them. And all of a sudden you realize that there's just an infinite capacity that you have to be resilient and continue to persevere and be addicted to the hard. So I love the way you describe that. And I think when history is written, we'll all be glad that you persevered through the tough times, and that writer ultimately will be wildly successful.
Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate that.
We're out of time, but one last chance to share anything about writer that we haven't talked about, or anything that our audience should know about where to learn more about you and your work.
I think maybe one thing that we haven't talked about is how fun it is to work here. And we've had one person leave the team kind of voluntarily over the past 2.5 years plus. And I do think that this is a very special team building a very special product. One of the kind of dirty secrets of AI products right now is people aren't using them after the first few weeks, maximum the first couple of months. And we have incredible stickiness. People are living in writer. We've got DAOs over mouths that look like email, and NRRs that are off the charts. And it's because this is a team that wants to enable everybody. We're not going to leave anybody behind. And there will be a lot of executives and a lot of companies that would love nothing more than to get down to 4,000 or 5,000 people from 15,000 people. And we're not going to be able to impact that too much, but we will be able to know that we went into enterprises and really tried to equip everybody with the skills they need to be successful in an AI first world. And it's a team that, from the early translation days, really believes a lot in equity globally. And providing equal opportunities for people. It's a very diverse team as a result. And we're going after a big mission. Competition is the big boys, and we're winning. In our small way, we are winning, and would love for folks listening who are interested in our mission of making AI that people love to reach out. I'm May at Writer. We're hiring for literally everything. So whatever you do, if you've been in tech before, please reach out.
May, we are all rooting for you and the team to succeed. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you so much, Dan.
That's a wrap for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from People Rain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.